Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us once again on Dojo Live, connecting with tech experts like you. My name is Kim Landis, broadcasting live from Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico. Joining me is my teammate, Carlos Ponce. Hey, Carlos.
Hi, Kim. Pleasure to have you.
Yeah, we're both out of the office today, I see.
Yeah.
Hopefully connectivity is good.
Oh, yeah, it is.
And disclaimer here, folks, I'm having to broadcast live from my home, and I have a 6-year-old daughter, so if she interrupts us, Gabe and everyone, my apologies. I've told her not to. I don't want to be the next BBC folly there. So here at Dojo Live, yes, we've enjoyed quite a few talks about AI recently, and today's guest is here to tell us a bit more about yet another space where AI can be used, and that's in content creation. So I'm pleased to welcome Dave Ray, the founder and CEO of RivetAI. Welcome to Dojo Live, Dave.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you for joining us. So Dave, please go ahead and share a bit more about your background and ultimately how that led to the creation of RivetAI, please.
Yeah, so I've been working in the AI space as a research scientist for more than 10 years. I got my start in the space of deep learning when I was still in my undergrad at University of Toronto. I was fortunate to work with Jeff Hinton in his lab, who was kind of one of the founders of the field. And at that time, deep learning wasn't quite the buzzword as it is now. That changed over time, obviously. And then from there, I had a foray into the world of finance, and then went back to grad school, went to Caltech, to do my PhD in computation and neural systems. Then kind of entrepreneurship came calling more than academia. And I started my first company around deep learning and natural language processing called Pasadena Labs, where we were building technology for search engine marketing. And then from there, went on to my next startup called VideoAmp, which was around video advertising. So a platform for advertisers to broadcast their video ads, and we'd optimize those ads. And what I saw there was, video ads and advertising is one thing, but really it was built on a foundation of content. At the end of the day, when you have good content, that leads to better ads. And also that was a more fun space to be. Also a space where a lot of the deep learning technologies were coming into fruition or maturity, where you can now start applying them into more things like video analysis, image analysis, natural language understanding. So the technology kind of matured to the point where you could start using that for content creation, content development. And that really led to my next endeavor, which was working closely with a production company called NQ, where I really got to learn a lot about what it meant to produce large-scale content, and very directly within Hollywood, kind of understanding the process, and also at the same time seeing a lot of the inefficiencies.
No.
No, there are no deficiencies in Hollywood. And then realizing that there were many parts where AI could plug in to really streamline a lot of the process of content creation, because the people who go into this creative industry, they didn't go there to do a lot of the tedious work. And
right.
Behind the scenes, we know that there's a lot of tedious work to make something that looks that polished. Countless hours have gone in the background. So a lot of the AI tools are tackling that, but at the same time augmenting or maybe supercharging the creativity that people naturally possess. So that led me to founding RivetAI, and I've been joined by some amazing team members. So now we went from catering to Hollywood, but then at the same time gathering some really great data, making our algorithms better, to creating a platform, an open platform for all types of content creators, from amateurs all the way to Fortune 1000 companies, who can then use the platform to make better content. Go from these ideas to developing a script to what it would take to turning that into a video production. So streamlining a lot of those processes and also kind of improving a lot of the creative elements along the way.
Wow, congratulations. So the root behind your product comes more from finding and discovering this need rather than perhaps, or do you also have that passion for content creation yourself?
Definitely it came from, I was driven. The short answer is both. I was driven both by the market need as well as my own interest and passion behind it. And it's not typical. Most people who enter content creation or creative endeavors, they do it out of passion. But often what that leads to is there's a lot of passion behind it, but then it leads a lot of like efficiency gaps. So, while being part of the team that produced feature films, or being part of the team that did development on projects that came in, I had kind of a first like a front row seat, or basically hands-on kind of part of the process to figure out how film development and film production takes place. And that's where it was very easy to connect the dots of where do we take technologies that are currently available or can be developed into this process, into the film production process. And that itself is a pretty big industry. Like, Hollywood is a really big industry, not just in terms of revenues, that's like $40-50 billion a year, but also in terms of cultural impact. No other industry has the same sort of impact on our culture and the ability to shape societies and so on. So the impact is, way beyond even the monetary impact. And at the same time, it expands to beyond Hollywood. So one of the things that we saw is, as we were doing this, I had so much interest coming in from Fortune 1000 companies that said, hey, and this helped because I came from a video ad background. And the common complaint there is video ads, this 30-second ads or 15-second ads, all they can do is really capture attention. That's what ads are meant to do. They capture attention for a brief moment. So you don't have the ability to tell a story there. You capture attention briefly, and then you overload people with messages. When that happens, it doesn't necessarily resonate with the customer that much. So companies across the board, they're not seeing the kind of ROI from advertising that they'd like. There are like jokes everywhere, which is like half the money I spent on advertising was wasted. I just don't know which half. Part of the problem is, it's like a catchy ad that will get eyeballs. So that what people measure are eyeballs, but that doesn't necessarily translate to capturing hearts and minds.
Conversion.
Exactly, conversion. So what drives that, though, is storytelling. Storytelling, we're naturally geared towards that. We love to see, what the brand, what the company is all about, and whether that resonates with us. So if you contrast the difference between an ad, like let's say a company like Kaiser Permanente, and one ad could just be like 12 guys in a suit and talking about, hey, we're Kaiser Permanente. Or let's talk about the story, like an oncologist who's and a patient's, the problems that they had. They went to the doctor, like their lives, how that were affected by it. And then the doctor prescribes a solution, how they struggle with it. There's always a huge human element that's never portrayed in advertising, but really what connects people are the human stories and the human elements. So what companies see is sponsored content drives conversions a lot more. So a lot of the bigger budgets are shifting away from these video ads to storytelling, to sponsored content pieces. That's having way higher ROI. And we will see over time a lot of the budget moving. But what that means is there aren't enough people to produce this content. Whenever I have these conversations with these Fortune 1000 companies, they say, great, we want to produce 100 times the content that we currently are. There's just no way for us to do so. The biggest problem being like the talent. There aren't enough talented, like there's not enough creative talent to meet this demand. So that's really what the platform's all about. The RivetAI platform's all about, which is taking the precious talent, creative talent, enabling them to produce a lot more, and also it's not the type of know-how that should necessarily stay in the heads of a few people in Hollywood. In fact, it can go out beyond that, like give amateurs more of an ability to produce better content, or just churn out more better content over time to meet this demand. And also, it's not just the Fortune 1000 companies. There's all these new channels, especially social media channels, where individuals are going out, and telling their story or want to tell the story. So platforms like ours help them with their craft their own stories and reach an audience.
So what's the type of content that needs to be input into your application? So let's say, for example, Nearsoft, we outsource software development. We're around getting very close to the 200 developer mark, which is exciting for us. We pride ourselves, for example, on our diversity, the fact that we're like a very flat organization, democratic. And I feel that within us, for example, there's some really valuable content. We've got some very amazing people with some very amazing stories to tell, in addition to the awesome clients that we get to serve and form these long-term relationships with. So what would I need to input into RivetAI for it to tell me or to create or help me to create this valuable content? Or if I input data, what's it going to spit out for me, or how does that function?
Mm-hmm. So on the SaaS side, what we'd do is ingest data about Nearsoft, about the company's profile, products, and so on. That will help us identify concepts and then tie those concepts to what the public, the audience really cares about. And
based off of other successful campaigns, or what's the...
Yeah, other successful campaigns, and then what's trending, or not just like most immediately trending, but long-term trends and where they're going. So, just as an example, like with one of our clients, it could be they're working on IoT. So they're a big company, but one of the focuses on IoT, and within that, IoT for healthcare. So that's something that we discover in the data by going through social media campaigns, going through what articles people are writing, and then discover that's a concept that people are really caring about. So when that forms within the focus area of that company, then we match that to people within the company. So from individual profiles, we're able to match someone working in the field of IoT, healthcare expert, and match that to this trending area. And once you've made that match, you can ask them a series of questions to elicit all the data and all the responses you need to now be able to form or craft a narrative together. Then that's where our AI part comes in, where we're able to look at different combinations of the data or the individual pieces and be able to generate different narrative flows out of that. So once we have the narrative flow, that can then go into the communications department and say, okay, this is the story. Rather, this is kind of like what the script really looks like. Then once you have the script, we have a self-service platform called Agile Producer, where you can go from script all the way to script breakdowns, to budget estimations, to storyboarding, and down to like the scheduling. And that's kind of like, now you've got this from the story to like a packaged binder of stuff, like go out there and make this. So that's a lot of the part, like story, for example, when you go from scripts to script breakdowns. So a script breakdown is going from the words on a page to figuring out what the elements are going to be necessary to produce a video, like going from words to the physical manifestation. And that's a very cumbersome process. I mean, that for film scripts takes like 2-3 weeks to do at least. And imagine like, you're a production company that has to evaluate all these scripts coming in. That's just like really, really tough. So that's a process that our system automates down to a few minutes. And we're 90 to 95% accurate as a human line producer to do that part. And that's the part.
If forgive me my interruption. So this would be like, here's a script, and now let's say there's 6 different scenes. So I need to find what's going on here. I need a coffee shop. I need a park. It's the computer is basically breaking down all of these elements.
Yeah, it's breaking down all of the elements using natural language understanding. And the reason why it's not just like finding the nouns and all that in a script breakdown, or just identifying characters. Characters are just one piece of it. But identifying the nouns and so on are critical. But when you're telling a story, there are a lot of similes, analogies that are being used. So those similes and analogies, like it could be, and the man released a bee into the room, right? That then you have to depict a bee. But then, or it could say the drone was buzzing like a bee around the room. So you don't depict the bee. So that's where we have data sets that we have trained on. So it identifies what's an analogy and what's really an element that needs to be depicted. Otherwise, you'll end up with a lot of false positives.
Right. That's very advanced.
Yeah. Otherwise, you end up with a lot of false negatives, or you miss some critical elements. So those are the things that we have trained our algorithms on. We started off with scripts. So that's one of the things, is we started off within Hollywood, where we started with the scripts and went from there to kind of make this process more efficient. And that was a great place for us to start, because Hollywood is the place for content creators. We were able to work with the best content creators out there. And we have over 1,200 signed production companies on our platform. So that gives us a really strong kind of basis data set to best-in-class data to be able to do this script breakdown process, and then even come up with different budget estimations. So it's also like lowering the barrier to entry for a lot of folks, because you could be an excellent writer, but just not know all these other processes that are involved. So you can get onto our platform and generate at least a first ballpark.
That's very interesting. And so let me back up and make sure that I'm understanding you correctly. Like, basically what I understand is that your product essentially helps you create this recipe for success. Like looking at who your market is, what you're trying to create, the content that you may already have, and then it says, look, you're on to this, focus on these things. And so given that recipe for success, then you've streamlined your ability to focus your creativity. Then you can creatively create the scripts and things that you want, and then it can go in and help you refine that process again. Now that you have what you want to work for, let's get estimates on costs. Let's find out or compare. It could perhaps compare 2, 3, 4 different scripts to find out which one is going to be the most cost effective, or whatever your variables that you're interested in are. Is that correct?
Yeah, and but I do want to point out that there are 2 different use cases, 2 different types of customers here. One is storytelling, very specific story to tell. Unless you're you're working with a studio and your goal is to produce hits, right? So you produce Spider-Man 32 versus Batman 57. Like that's a different case. But usually people have very specific stories to tell. And so in that case, it's not so, so driven by what's trending and what's not. It's that's, you have a story to tell. So now you can use our Agile producer platform to go from that script to what it would take to meet it all the way
Become
to
a reality.
destination. Exactly. And that enables people to have much better conversations with producers, because producers are looking at numbers, they're looking at costs, they're looking at all those elements, right? So that's one market segment. And it's available for writers to go from script. Like in a lot of these cases, it's also educational, because you can understand the steps involved and what a producer will be thinking about when they evaluate. So that's one part. The other piece is, as a studio, a financer, a production company, you want to be able to evaluate a lot of scripts that are coming in. And the main data point that people use right now is just like a gut feel, which is like, I think this sounds good. Or it's like looking at past predictors of success, like, oh, well, Spider-Man 6 did well, so 7 should be a hit too. So so going beyond that to actually looking at a script and how that, what kind of narrative flow that generates. And we've used it internally. Like we started off at NQ, where we were able to use this technology to evaluate incoming projects. And we ended up going after a lot of projects that would have normally been a pass if you just looked at the short story pitch. But then when you took the script, broke it down, looked at the narrative storyline, it seemed like a diamond in the rough. And we were able to bet on projects that were risky, but not very risky for us, because we could break down and remove a lot of the uncertainties. And we're able to, for one, very recently, we were able to then sell to Netflix. So so the hit rate is a lot higher when you use a process like this. And also, in terms of the other segment is corporations that want to drive and want to use this tool for content creation more as a SaaS platform. And so for them, they start off with a company like let's say IBM. They don't have a specific story to tell. They want to see what they're producing, how that matches with what's trending in the market. So the story part itself, starting with that, from the very first step, which is what should you even write about? That is data driven.
Okay.
And then once you have the story, then it follows the rest of the process.
Thank you. Thank you for distinguishing that, and just the types of customers you have and how you are better able to serve both of them. Carlos, it's my understanding that we have a question from our audience.
Yeah, actually, yes. It's from one of our guys, Axel. And I'm just going to quote here, and I'm assuming that he refers to AI, and today's topic is, how do you go about maintaining a competitive edge related to your platform?
So I think, in terms of, there are two places. One is our team generally, our team as a whole, has been in the field for a long time. And we started off by being interested in the problem of natural language understanding and natural language generation. And we came from scientific backgrounds and all. So we've worked in this space for a long time. So we have, worked on algorithms. I mean, they're available to use through the platform. The other thing is data. So we had a leg up from the very beginning because we were working within a production environment, within a production company. We understood a lot of the pain points, and there are some very unique kind of challenges that came up. So it was very driven by needs, end user needs. And as more and more people came onto our platform, we were able to refine a lot of the elements, and also train our system on the best data out there. So that is that's something that's really hard for competitors to catch up on.
Okay.
That's
Thank you
really.
so much. Sorry, Kim.
It's okay. Sorry, I think there might be a slight delay between the two of us. I wasn't trying
Yeah.
to interrupt.
Probably. That's okay. So I think that's the only question right now that we have internally, Kim. And let's see. I just wanted to mention something real quick, folks. If you're watching now or will be watching at a later time, if you have any questions for Dave, either now or some other time in the future while watching on the website, uh, send us your questions on Twitter. That would be like the ideal way to go. It's just send them on Twitter. At the handle is at dojo.live, DOJOLIVE at dojo.live. Just send them over. We'll read them back to Dave right now if we're live, if we're still live, and if not, then we can just follow up a later time. But just remember, at DOJOLIVE, dojo live. Thank you, Kim. Back to you.
Thank you. Dave, I think you've done a really good job of explaining this for me. I think before we started our talk today, the tagline for the talk that you had chosen was how AI can augment creativity and streamline the content creation process. I think the streamlining makes a lot of sense to me. I think it helps take away some of those tedious comparisons and making estimates for us and things like that. When it comes to augmenting the creativity, is there a way that the AI can basically analyze the content that you have and perhaps highlight places that are excellent or places that need to be improved upon?
So, I think the challenge is when it comes to creativity is we don't necessarily know an objective function, right? If you're dealing with driverless cars, then the objective function is clear. Don't run over pedestrians. Don't skip stop signs. So there's a well-known objective function that you can write down. When it comes to an aesthetic judgment, that's much harder to do. So one of the things that we do is try to learn preference functions. So if you are the person interacting directly with the generative component, then you're learning your preference functions along the way with active learning. If it's an audience, so like let's say the goal is for a company to find the best matching audience, best matching topic, then that is learning the audience preference functions. So everything is then, for an aesthetic criteria, focuses on learning preference functions, whether it's an individual or audiences, or maybe even a niche audience segment. So once we have a handle on the preference function, then that kind of serves as what the AI is then trying to optimize towards. Generally, though, like it's the question comes up like creativity that that's going to be hard to do for an AI. Well, it's hard to do because the objective function isn't that clear. But if you look at and that second question comes up, shouldn't it be like uniquely human? And the answer to that is if you look at other fields like architecture, that several years ago was purely creative aesthetic endeavor. And then until you had AutoCAD come along. And AutoCAD, what it did is really supercharge the ability for an individual architect to create much more complex creations, right? So now you can't imagine working without AutoCAD. So I think the same thing is happening now where, movies were one format and you could tell a story within 2 hours, but things are moving into serials and they're moving into televised content where the content runs for a really long time, or interactive video games. In those sort of things, interactive video games are, or let's say like you're in a VR environment and so on, you want the content to be very personalized to you. So in those cases, it's harder and harder for writers to cater to those very specific paths. So that's like one example of where a tool like this that augments creativity, just like AutoCAD does, will enable us to tell more complex stories than we naturally would be able to.
I think that's a really great analogy. Thank you for answering that question. So real quick, we're coming to the end of our half hour today. I was just a bit curious about RivetAI, your company culture. What's it like, and what types of guiding principles might you use and have?
Yeah, so for us, culture is really important because what we are focused on is driving innovation. We're tackling a market of creatives, and we are trying to come up with the best AI tools, best software tools. And our structure, our culture mingles like work and play. It's at the end of the day, it's the best work will be done by people. Best creative work will be done when we're operating as part of a part of a unit, a part of a tribe, where it's just like where the boundaries between work and play kind of blur. So a big element of that is obviously hiring. We want folks who fit into our general culture.
Right.
Our culture of, like we are very serious and delivering, and we always meet our targets. But it's because it's for most people, it's not like hard and fast deadlines that need to happen. It's more oriented towards like fostering, best match of what individuals on our team can do and what the project goals are. So we are much more flexible internally in terms of, pieces, like project that everyone can carve out. And we don't have separate assignment. Everyone gets together in our weekly meetings. We talk about everything that's going on within the company. And people move in and out of projects based on their areas of expertise. And we come together at the end. So, in terms of scaling up, we're following the same structure where it would be like very pod-specific groups of people that are trying to tackle a project. So this pod would be someone who's good at front-end development, someone who's good at the science of it, data science, someone who's good at putting the infrastructure together more on the platform side. And these pods will basically tackle different challenges together, as opposed to having like X number of tickets and going through them one by one. It's a much more collaborative environment, team effort to tackle problems together.
Thank you. That's very refreshing, and it's exciting to hear that. What is your scalability? How many team members do you have right now, if you don't mind sharing? And
so we have
question was sorry.
We have a team of 7 right now, and we're scaling it up because not beyond the engineering side, because now we have corporate clients. So we have more of a sales team as our production capability, like as more production companies have come on board. It's more community management and client services. And then at the same time, we're very selectively growing our technology team as well.
Well, congratulations. It's exciting. I hope that you find the key to that success of keeping the connectivity of the passion with the innovation, with the creativity in this very tight-knit units or pods, to have that scale with you as you grow.
Yeah.
I see that as one of your challenges in the future. A good challenge to have.
Yeah, I mean, culture first and foremost kind of determines really the scalability of a company, and so we're really focused on building the best culture that we can.
Very good. Few companies, I think, appreciate that, although it seems to be a growing trend, which I think is very encouraging. Yeah. Any final words you might have with us, final words of wisdom, Dave, as we wrap up today?
I mean, I would encourage everyone to go to RivetAI.com and then get an access to our beta access and then test out our platform. We since the beginning we've focused more on a diversity of content. So it wasn't just like feature films. We also worked with commercial production companies where it really helps them, because one of the challenges of commercial production is you're submitting lots and lots of bids. So a platform like ours helps them manage a lot of their budgeting, and also rather than having team members spend like weeks or months like crafting RFPs together, piecing them together, our tools have helped them solve that much more quickly, free up their time a lot more. We've worked with animation studios. Video game is an interesting area for us. We'd love to have more users there. So just visit us, RivetAI.com, and feel free to contact me if there are any questions.
Perfect. And all of that will be easily accessed from the Dojo Live website as well. Well, congratulations, Dave, and your endeavors, your passion, and the creativity behind what is RivetAI. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Yeah, same here, Dave. Thank you so much for having agreed to be here with us in the first place. And the only thing left for me to do, Kim, let's make a quick announcement about. Actually, this week is going to be a double whammy, what we call a double whammy, because we're going to have tomorrow, Tuesday. We're also going to have we're going to have a Dojo Live interview, and it's also going to be about AI, by the way, in a different vertical, but it's also AI. It's about storytelling in sales. So how storytelling is more important than ever in sales and in business today. And tomorrow is going to this is Ali McKee, the CEO and founder of a company called Stick, which is a communication platform built for B2B sales and success teams. So we're going to have her tomorrow here on Dojo Live, same time, 1 Pacific, 3 Central. And so, folks, if you're watching, just make a note of it and join us tomorrow for another AI-related interview right here on Dojo Live. So, and of course, Dave, you're more than welcome to join us for questions or whatever. Yeah, it should be interesting. And one more thing, Kim, I'd like to formally thank our teammate. She's kind of in the background, but she's watching, and I know you're there. She's Carmen. She's she's doing the Twitter thing, as I call it, the Twitter thing. And she's coding. So Carmen, I rarely get to acknowledge you live, but because I miss it most of all. But I didn't want to miss it this time. So Carmen, thank you for your help. You're great, and it's a great thing to have you as part of the Dojo Live team. So that's all I have. Kim, Dave, again, thank you both for being with us today. And stay tuned, folks, for more Dojo Live episodes in the near future. Tomorrow is the next one, by the way.
Yes. And once again, thank you. Storytelling with marketing and a tool that, or RivetAI is a great tool to help us do that with our content. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave. Yeah. Have a great day.
Until next time, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.